Arc 5, Stars that Engrave History. Chapter 48, The Person You Will One Day Fall in Love With. For a moment, Amelia did not understand the meaning of what had been said to her. Without thinking, she swallowed. The young man in front of her, Regulus, in response, raised a hand while smiling. Regulus, I'm sorry for doing this so suddenly. I may have shocked you a little. Honestly, I apologize on that point. It seems I keep on having to say it, but I am a man capable of apologizing. There are unsightly people in this world who do not acknowledge their own sins and blame this and that, too small to admit they make their own mistakes. They think they do not get a single thing wrong, even if you empty out everything they've done since birth to this very moment and examine it. Mistaken so, I think they become like that, but just how arrogant can they be? If they could just examine what lies under their feet a little more, and compare themselves to the vastness of the world and come to truly understand how small of an existence they really are, then they would not end up like that. Just a single apology is what they call a personality? It reflects their character. Don't you think so? Amelia, then apologizing is important? Regulus, correct. That's right, apologizing is important. What a relief. It's obvious, and you seem to understand that point, so I am quite relieved. In this world, people that cannot understand something so obvious are unexpectedly many. It makes me dislike them. So, it seems there's no problem on the matter of adjusting understandings between the spouses about apologizing. I'm relieved, it seems like I'll be able to get along well with you from now on. And so, I apologized. The problem was, I was being a little impatient. Having spoken up to that point, Regulus' eyes looked Amelia up and down. As her body was only wrapped in a blanket, she froze up a little at that view. Regulus, yes, shyness is important even between spouses. On that point I think you are very good. Once again, it's about the question from just before, I'd rather you not misunderstand. I, more than anything, was not checking whether or not you are a virgin from a worldly point of view. I've said this multiple times, but I am your husband and you are my wife. It will not do for a marriage to lack strong ties of affection and courtesy. Connected with the long chain called love, devoting everything to your partner is obvious. Therefore, that you have never been touched by another man, that's the kind of assurance I need. Amelia, assurance that I wasn't touched by others. Regulus, of course, checking whether or not you retain your maidenhood by sure evidence is nonsense. But as a kind of touchstone, I think it has such significant value. So, deliberately, even knowing it would be an experience you don't enjoy, I asked. I want you to understand that this is due to my love for you. Some stranger you don't love, who cares about how their virginity is. It's because I love you, that's why I'm checking. Regulus fluently and continuously spoke of the rationale behind his thoughts. Battered by these waves of words, Amelia felt something creepy about the coolly talking Regulus. Without knowing why, something about his appearance ceaselessly stirred a feeling of déjà vu in her heart, and the contents of what she heard pouring like water were not retained in her memory. Only, she was aware of one thing. What he treated as important, the term virgin. That was. Regulus, and so, I want to ask once again. Hey, are you a virgin? Or not? Amelia, by virgin, what do you mean? Sorry. I haven't heard it before. Regulus, what? After being thrown a question prepared with flowery words, Amelia apologetically replied so. She knew Regulus had a strong attachment to the word, but Amelia did not know very well what it meant. Perhaps, it refers to a young girl, she thought. Inquiring in a low voice and hearing Amelia's reply, Regulus' expression clouded. Closing his eyes, he shut his mouth. Fallen in thought like that, his appearance caused anxiety to creep up, but the silence didn't last as long as imagined. Opening his eyes wide, Regulus reached his open hand towards Amelia. And? Regulus, excellent. You are my ideal girl. Amelia, Holding Amelia's hand, Regulus wore a bright smile on his face. It was a truly happy face, unlike the smile from just before. He had the kind of expression that a beaming child might make after getting a toy they really wanted from their doting parents. Regulus grabbed and shook Amelia's hand up and down, and repeated the gesture many times. Regulus, yes. That is how it should be. The virginity of the body this, the virginity of the body that, it's not really suitable for me as a touchstone, I had always thought so. However, the true sense of pureness is what lies in your heart. Your body being virgin is a given. What's really important is that your mind remains virgin as well. I feel as if I have reached a truth. Amazing. You have brought something new to my previously satisfied self. Amelia. Regulus, yes, I get it. Rest assured, I will welcome you as my wife. Besides, because of that I realized something important. Henceforth, when welcoming a new wife, just inquiring as to their virginity will be insufficient. If they are not at the level of a child lacking knowledge of what virginity even is, that lowers the value of a wife. An adulterous heart will not do. It is unbefitting of my wife. Releasing Amelia's hand, Regulus stepped away with a very satisfied appearance. The meaning of his remarks were still not very well grasped by Amelia. In the first place, what he meant by husband and wife was a mystery to her. By Amelia's understanding, the wife was part of something the father and mother were, one each, but from Regulus' remarks, the image of many wives came to mind. Such was a notion far off from Amelia's common sense of the nature of married couples. Perhaps he was talking about a different concept with a shared pronunciation? Regulus, whoa, and your appearance cannot be left like that. I will arrange for a change of clothes straight away. Number 184. Come here. Amelia. Leaving the perplexed Amelia alone, Regulus suddenly spoke out a number. Then, from the other side of the corridor, the woman who had left the room Amelia was in now appeared. A young woman with long blonde hair and a polite manner, she arrived next to Regulus and demurely greeted him on the spot. Regulus nodded at her gestures and... Regulus, for her, a change of clothes for number 79. As soon as that's prepared, I will hold the wedding. This child is in the same position as all of you. Get along and do take care of her. Number 184. Regulus, yes, you are no longer prone to laughing. Good child. A good wife. To the silently nodding woman, Regulus spoke as if satisfied. After that, approaching Amelia who still seemed lost, he ran a finger through the side of her silver hair and stroked her head. Regulus, then, a little while later. Amelia, yes. Amelia's instinct was appealing to her, to avoid going against him. Accepting Amelia's short reply, Regulus then, with the sound of footsteps, disappeared to the other side of the corridor. Regulus had merely just been there, calmly too even then, his existence gave off a strange pressure, which seemed to her a dangerous threat that reminded her of the time her old homeland had been threatened. Number 184, this way. The woman next to Amelia suddenly called out to her. She had been gazing at the back which had long since disappeared. Hearing the woman's voice for the first time, she was reminded of string instruments from its clear beauty. However, the voice, just like her expression, felt as if all feelings of emotion in it had frozen and hardened. Amelia, hey, sorry. I have a lot of questions I want to ask. Number 184, your change of clothes. Amelia, the clothes are important, but there's also, yes, do you know where this place is? I was at a plaza in Pristella with a witch cult person, really? Ignoring Amelia as she tried to ask questions, the woman started to walk off immediately. Following quickly behind her, Amelia kept asking questions trying to somehow shine light on the situation, but that fully turned back replied to her with nothing. Guided by the woman in front of her, she arrived next to the room she had slept in previously. It was also a space which resembled a simply arranged room, in which furniture had been forcefully shoved inside. Amelia, this must have, originally, been a slightly different room. Number 184, the clothes chosen with care, and so on, husband Sama brought them over. Number 79, you are to change into them. Amelia, by number 79, do you mean me? Just now, I think Regulus called me by that too. You're number 184, I am number 184. His wife, like you. Amelia, like me. As the door closed, only then did the woman naming herself number 184, engage herself in conversation. There was no change in the voice which had lost its emotion, but it seemed barely possible to make conversation. Amelia, about the word wife, I've asked a few times, but does it mean the same as Mrs.? Then, I don't think I'd become Regulus Mrs. Number 184, even if no such idea resides with you, he has such a notion. And if he has that idea, that means yours are irrelevant. Amelia, isn't that strange? To become a Mrs., you have to be married with your master, right? I didn't get married with Regulus, and don't have any thoughts to. Marrying is between a guy person and a girl person, who say they will keep being together, and have to keep liking each other after. I can't make a promise like that with anyone yet. Number 184, if you mean a wedding, it will be held right now. With that, the matter will be concluded. Number 184 did not seem to possess any notion of listening to Amelia's words. Even as dialogue seemed established, it actually wasn't, and Amelia became more and more confused. In the meantime, number 184 had approached Amelia, and was trying to pull aside the blanket covering her. Amelia, wait, what are you doing? Number 184, changing you into bridal attire right away. Fortunately, your clothes are already prepared. When undressing you to lay you in bed, your size was checked, so please rest assured. Amelia, you were the one who undressed me? Number 184, do you think I'm husband Sama? Please be assured. He does not make a habit of stealing peeks at women's skin, and he doesn't have any interest in women in the first place. After your virginity has been assured, he does not do anything. Amelia, you are talking about that virgin too? Number 184, it is surprising. Surely, but it wasn't acting, you really did not know? For the first time, something resembling emotion slightly flitted across No 184's expression. At that faintly surprised look, Amelia opened her eyes wide, then slightly laughed. Amelia, what, you can be surprised too? Then, you can talk while smiling. That is, much better suited for you, I think. Number 184, Husband Sama does not desire it. I will also leave this advice with you, Husband Sama likes your usual look. It is wiser not to laugh, rage, or change your expression. If possible, even not opening your mouth would be better, I think. Amelia, are you saying not to talk? Why? Number 184, since you won't know whether it infringe on Husband Sama's rights. Stripping the bedding from Amelia, Number 184 fed undergarments. After receiving it, she held it up to her body, and the size seemed to fit perfectly. Watching her putting on the undergarments while shaking her hands and feet, Number 184 suddenly gave a long sigh. Amelia, is something wrong? Number 184, no, I was merely thinking that you were beautiful. Your narrow hands and feet, white skin, and long silver hair, especially. Amelia? Thanks. Even if you don't really mean it, I'm happy. I only have Subaru and in telling me things like that. Number 184, Subaru, a man, is it? Amelia, yes, my knight. He will really be worrying about me, I think. So, I want to find out where I am quickly. Probably, it would be causing him lots of worry. In Amelia's head, there wasn't any concern of Subaru having been done in. He had Beatrice with him, and the notion of Subaru falling into a situation where he would die didn't reach Amelia's imagination in the first place. Subaru, he would get through it somehow. And so, being captured without being able to say anything to Subaru was really pathetic. Number 184, that man you call Subaru, do not ever mention him to Husband Sama. Amelia, why? Number 184, to borrow Husband Sama's words, the virginity of your mind may become suspect. Amelia, again, it's about that virgin. Giving a term as the reason without explaining what it meant was really confusing. Without explanation beyond that for the pouting Amelia, Number 184 took a pure white dress from the closet and held it close to Amelia's body. With a brilliant-looking front and many fancy ornaments stuck on, it was a beautiful dress. Amelia, but it looks hard to move in. Number 184, complaints too, not speaking those would be wise. I will dress you now. Wondering, her head tilted askew, whether such a wonderful outfit would even suit her, Amelia was putting it on as instructed by Number 184, she was changing into the dress. Regulus, isn't that just great? As I thought, white suits you. Amelia, thanks. Regulus said in a bright voice when he saw that Amelia had changed clothes. His appearance too had changed from their hallway meeting just before. Amelia's expression suggested that she had noticed, and Regulus lightly popped his collar in reply. Regulus, a wedding is important, you know. Normally, I am of the thought not to not be attired as such, but I wouldn't want to embarrass you with some unfun stubbornness. It is the ideal for spouses to show consideration for each other, without thinking of it as uncomfortable. For this level of work, I do not wish to burden you with worried thoughts about all the consideration I have shown you. I merely want you to know that, if it is for your sake, I am a man that can accept making some changes. And for the venue, it will be ready soon, in just a little while. Amelia, the venue, you mean here? Dressed in a white tuxedo and robes, Regulus turned his head, and following him, Amelia also gazed around the space she was in. It was a cathedral to be exact, it was a cathedral used only for the single important task of beginning a wedding ceremony. After having been changed by Number 184, Amelia had left the building for the first time, and quickly realized she had been resting in a room within one of the control towers. As such, Amelia had been led by Number 184 from the tower and brought right to this cathedral. The outside of the cathedral was busy with laboring figures bustling about, for the wedding preparations which they were methodically continuing. And wordlessly, blankly carrying out the preparation of the venue, wherever one looked, were beautiful and fashionably attired women. Regulus, these girls are my wives, they're in the same position as you are. Altogether, they number 291, it's sad, but a lot of those kids died, you know. But still, for those that are still with me, I pour my love onto them equally, I think. That's obvious. Some principle of favoring and loving only one person is too distorted to be fitting for what you call a husband. I never do such absurd things. Of fixed love, in a fixed amount, by fixed ways, I divvy it out. Here, there is no favoritism, no inequality, no injustice. Be relieved. For I also love you in that same way. Amelia, what you are saying, isn't it? Husband Sama. Briefly, a word. Isn't it weird? Amelia was about to say. Coming to the front, number 184, who had been waiting at their side, spoke to Regulus. Hearing no 184's words, he vaguely furrowed his brows. Regulus, you know. I'm talking to her right now, you see that, right? Interrupting me now, when we're sharing and nurturing the sprouting of love between us, just me and her, don't you think you're smearing poison on it? Or is that just not on your mind? Such small courtesies between a husband and wife, I think they're really important. Didn't I keep telling you that? And yet, by still getting in the way, you're making my very minor wish go to waste. What do you think, number 184? Number 184, I am truly sorry. However, this is important. I know it is presumptuous, but I am only acting out of concern for husband Sama. I humbly ask you to hear my words. His speaking grew more rapid, and signs of danger erupted from Regulus' whole body. However, even exposed to that razor-sharp look, no 184's resolute attitude did not bend as she advised him. Naturally, at that sight, Regulus drew back the thorns from his appearance. Regulus, fine. Speak. Sparing some kindness for the wife is a husband's generosity. I am not such a petty man that I can't even do that much. Number 184, I am truly grateful. Well, it is regarding the message of the broadcast from a while ago. Will that be all right? If, potentially, a disturbance was made at the wedding. Regulus, the broadcast? The one that the trembling voice I don't really know made. Does it actually matter? If they just talk, it's not a problem at all. It's some complaint-filled coward that can't even speak of their own skills, listing off some fitting words, that's all it seems to me. If it's capella or serious, if it's for those trash, then I don't know, but I don't care. Or, is it that you don't trust in my strength? Then, as a wife, are you doubting your husband's abilities? Number 184, no, I believe in it. If husband Sama is there, then we have nothing to worry about. I was merely hoping for husband Sama's words to wash away my anxiousness, that's all. Please kindly forgive a lacking wife, who failed to rely on you. With a seemingly prepared reply, number 184 tried to dodge Regulus' inquiry. With a feeble girl's words and an expressionless face and voice, number 184 compelled him. And Regulus shook his head as if impressed by her words. Regulus, is that how it was? That, I myself didn't think of it, sorry. Even if I wasn't asked, I still should have noticed your anxious thoughts. One must consider the thoughts of others, even if they are unspoken, so just how much was I acting as I pleased? I reflect on myself. Number 184, it is rather I that is deeply sorry. Husband Sama's words have given me courage. I too will immediately set out to help in preparing the venue. Regulus, please do. Giving her farewell, number 184 turned away from Regulus. At the same time, she met Amelia's eyes and gave a furtive sort of wink. That was, probably, a warning to Amelia about the carelessness of her words from before she had been cut off. It was not wrong to describe Amelia as having neglected the danger Regulus poses. As such things were communicated, Amelia didn't hesitate to make a split-second judgment. Amelia, watch out. Number 184, huh? As number 184 was trying to make her escape, Amelia tugged hard on her arm. Clutching her tall but light body to her chest, Amelia took a big step backwards. The space in front of her, where number 184 had stood moments before, was caressed by the wind. Opening a long furrow in the cathedral floor, shattering it, and piercing straight through in a line of destruction. Without slowing down, the wind hit the main gate, turning the entryway into powder, then spread its destruction outwards. Amelia. At that instant of overwhelming destructive power, Amelia, who was cuddling with number 184, could not speak. Number 184 also, noticing the destruction while getting up from behind her, froze and completely curled up. And, standing at the destruction's point of origin in a pose as if he had swung his right arm moments before, was Regulus. Regulus, sorry. My hand just slipped. It's a relief that nothing happened to you kids. Amelia. Regulus, I'll be in the waiting room until it's time, so call me when everything's ready, okay? While you're waiting too, wouldn't putting up your hair be better? That option is much more attractive, I believe. It is beautiful as it is, I think, but putting effort into being beautiful is something that must be done ceaselessly is what I'm thinking. Rather than trying to stay beautiful, trying to become beautiful, is more the minimum level of courtesy towards someone that likes you, I say. Of course, I myself remain satisfied with my currently filled environment, but I have no mind to limit what I have been given already. Talking as if the moment's destruction was nothing, Regulus, while smiling at Amelia, headed for the waiting room door on the other side of the cathedral. Blankly left staring at the leftover traces of destruction, she was taking in deep breaths. Amelia, just now, what was that? Number 184, thank you very much for saving me. Saying so, number 184 pulled away from Emilia's bosom. Her previously frozen form fixed her disheveled hair, and she left Emilia's side right away. Her steps were taking her to where the other women inside the cathedral were preparing. It seemed those women were continuing their work with looks that suggested they were completely unrelated to the destruction from before. Not only that, but several of them had gathered around the destroyed floor and door, and could be seen beginning to work on somehow hiding its traces out of view. Emilia, wait. This is weird. Don't you guys think it's weird? Others. At that unperturbed attitude, Emilia raised her voice in confusion. As one, the women paid no heed to Emilia's voice, and merely continued to prepare in silence. If it's like this, then it will go on forever, Emilia thought, heading for the only person who her words seemed to get through to. Towards number 184. Emilia, just now, weren't you almost killed? If I hadn't pulled you back, surely your body would have been blown away. It was scary? Then why? Number 184, well, what is it? I've already thanked you for saving me. Beyond that, what else do you want from me? Anything else, is that not a violation of my rights? Emilia, this isn't about rights or obligations. Let's talk about something more important. Emilia pointed to the women still hard at work inside the cathedral. Emilia, Regulus said they're his wives. They're all that person's wife? And since they're wives, they do what he says? If you're a wife, then even if you're about to be murdered, you quietly accept it. That stuff is weird. It's weird. Emilia, that is too strange. Marriage is so happy, it's something happy people do, isn't it? To me, you the others, none of them look happy at all. Am I wrong? Number 184, yes, you are mistaken. Even if you aren't happy, marriage is possible. Spouses do not have to love each other. If they keep on being together, they become spouses. Then, as spouses, they grow used to it. Number 184 did not deny that she remained in a position she hated. Not only was she not refuting it, she was even affirming her own situation. That was distorted and wrong. Marriage is for those who want to become spouses. It is not something you just want to get used to. Emilia, that marriage stuff, I have no intention of going along with it. I will be leaving like this. Others. Those women who had not been paying attention to Emilia's words, at that they now raised their faces. As the wedding dress-clad Emilia announced her rejection of the marriage, they stared. Weathering the storm of those emotionless gazes, Emilia squared her shoulders. Emilia, I have someone worrying about me. And there's a lot of things I have to do no matter what. So, I can't just end up in a place like this. Together with everyone, right away, I will do what I have to. Number 184, such things, husband Sama will not forgive it. Emilia, I do not remember having become a wife of Regulus. So, I don't want something like forgiveness. Together with everyone, then, I will definitely return to save you all. Number 184, you. Emilia, all of you, I know you're not staying with Regulus because you want to. So I'll talk to Regulus and free everyone. Anyone that still wants to stay with him then, can just keep being his wife. But the people that want to be separated, I'll separate them. Even if you're forcefully married like that, it's meaningless if you're not happy together. The picture Emilia had painted inside her mind was of two people who loved each other and looked forward to being joined together. What floated in her mind, from her dream before, were Fortuna and Juice's appearances. Those two people had never wed, and had never become spouses. Still, she thought it was good. If it was those two, then Emilia wished she could have married them. A happy marriage and marriage ties of mutual love guaranteed, their relationship was the right one. So, Emilia, I know of people who loved each other, but could not be married. And so, getting married and being unable to be happy after, I don't like that kind of relationship. Others. At Emilia's declaration, a stir spread throughout the indifferent women. But number 184 rapidly extracted herself from that hubbub. She looked right at Emilia, and then at the destroyed entrance. Number 184, if you are choosing to leave, then that is your right. However, husband Sama would not forgive us. On the spot, surely, we will all be slain. Emilia, even though you're his wife. Number 184, a wife that cannot even fulfill husband Sama's wishes, is the same in husband Sama's view as one not able to fill all the requirements of a wife. If you leave, we will die. If you will still go, it will be you who kills us. Emilia. Facing Emilia, number 184 while taking her own life hostage spoke. Her opinion, with its extreme contents. As if it reflected the opinion of them all, the women in the cathedral stood to surround Emilia, and restricted her movements. Of course, there was nobody there who could fight and stop her. They were all somewhat ordinary women. Born from ordinary households, having ordinary morals, having lived while yearning for ordinary happiness, ordinary women. At some point, a wheel had come loose, and they had nearly become accepted as one of Regulus' wives. Others. She was unable to refute one bit of their resolute determination. Emilia had seen Regulus' crimes with her own eyes. For just slightly talking back, he had simply tried to blow their life away in response. It was that Regulus. When he learned of Emilia's escape, it was hard to claim that he would not take his anger out on them. It was none other than Regulus' wives who understood this well. Emilia, how many of Regulus' wives are here? Number 184, husband Sama's spouses, total 291 people. Of those, 238 have already passed away, so the remaining number 53 in all. Emilia, those wives who passed away. Number 184, do you need an explanation? The question she received in reply gave off a feeling of mocking her question. That answer, even without asking, Emilia came to realize it. And that answer lay in none other than the actions of those women circling around her without speaking. Emilia, if I left, then all of you would suffer something harsh. Rather than a harsh punishment, it would more likely be a certain, unavoidable death. Unmistakably, these women were hostages to Emilia's free will. Thinking of the damage leaving this place would incur, she should not move rashly. She thought about Subaru and his companions, outside of the cathedral in Pristella, worrying about her now. She thought of them, and in her mind, Emilia apologized. Then. Emilia, okay. The wedding, let's do it. After that, the venue's preparation proceeded at a rapid pace. Though they weren't professionals, the damage was repaired so well that it was barely noticeable anymore. Just by looking at the fine workmanship, one could tell just how often those women had to clean up after Regulus' tantrums. After Emilia agreed to proceed with the wedding, number 184, and a few of Regulus' other wives tended to her hair in the dressing room and decorated her with various adornments. Except for the times when Anne Rose helped her with her hair, this was the first time Emilia's hairstyle had been so elaborate since Puck disappeared within the crystal. Her long silver hair was gathered up and woven into a braid. So as not to distract from the purity of her white dress, with only a few simple embellishments, Emilia's bridal gown was complete. Emilia. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, Emilia admired the women's handiwork. Indeed, she looked very different from usual. With no one around to make demands about her hair aside from Subaru's occasional requests, it had been a while since she was imbued with such feminine charm. Though she couldn't help but feel it was wasted on her. Number 184, well, let's go. Please take care not to damage husband Sama's mood. Number 184 reminded Emilia as they headed out of the dressing room. Turning into the chapel, Emilia saw that the attendees had already lined up, waiting for her arrival, all of them wives of Regulus, along with Regulus himself in a white tuxedo standing in front of the altar. Although she didn't know the exact procedures, Emilia stepped onto the red carpet laid from the entrance and walked towards the altar where Regulus was waiting. Regulus nodded with satisfaction when he spotted the beautifully adorned Emilia. Regulus, I almost didn't recognize you when you put on the dress, but the adornments took it to a whole other level. I was right to have kept no 79 seat vacant. I couldn't be happier with my judgment. Emilia, no 79, why's that number vacant? Regulus, well, there used to be a woman who I initially thought would be a perfect fit for that number, but unfortunately I deemed her unsuitable before the wedding could take place. Although her all-important looks was very close to my ideal, I nevertheless reluctantly kept that seat vacant. But thanks to that, I met you, so it was all worthwhile after all. Emilia, kept, vacant. What's that supposed to mean? The mere sound of it reignited Emilia's already desensitized sense of Erinus. But even with this vague outline, she couldn't quite put her finger on just what it was. Meanwhile, Regulus adjusted his suit in front of Emilia in her bridal gown. Regulus, well now, shall we commence the wedding ceremony? I suppose it's a bit on the informal side, but I hope you don't mind? As long as the ceremony proceeds properly, the rest are just superficial details. I'm not one of those fools who prioritize the surface only to lose sight of the essence. Failing to see a matter's substance that way is simply laughable. How can someone be satisfied with only exteriors and outward appearances? Content with their ignorant, self-contained existence, they are too stupid to even notice that they're being laughed at behind their backs. Emilia. While Regulus continued his convoluted tirade, number 184 walked to the other side of the altar. Apparently, she would serve as the facilitator of this ceremony. Indeed, she seemed to be fulfilling a coordinating role among Regulus' 53 wives as well. Though it wasn't clear what that coordination amounted to when Regulus could kill any of them on the slightest whim. That was just another reason why this man was beyond forgivable. Emilia, say, Regulus. There's something I have to tell you before I marry you. Therefore, Emilia wanted to make it absolutely clear. No 184's expression tensed at Emilia's words. But Regulus gave a surprisingly friendly nod in reply. Regulus, that's right. There are some important things I want to tell you as well before you become my wife. Though I suppose I could gradually teach you after we are married, it's vital that you should be mentally prepared beforehand. To discover our differences here and thereafter we're already married would be tragic, don't you think? In order to make sure something so unfortunate doesn't happen, I think it's crucial that we openly share our thoughts with each other. Once we become a couple, we'll be bound heart and soul, so it's important that we sort this out first. Amelia, yeah. If it means being bound heart and soul, it's important, isn't it? Regulus, right? It's good that we get on the same page. So, my other wives must have already told you some of the rules, but why don't we go over them? First, once you're married to me, you are forbidden to smile. Amelia. Frowning, Amelia didn't seem to understand Regulus' meaning. But Regulus raised a finger and continued, well. Regulus, it's quite important, you know. I like your face. I really like your face. I select my wives based on their faces. Beautiful, adorable, charmingly well-proportioned faces. I've had 291 wives in all, and all of them had beautiful faces. Your face is adorable too. And that's why you will become my wife. Do you understand? Amelia. Regulus, here's what I think. There are many people in this world much more selfish than I. Don't you often hear about couples whose love begins to die the moment they get married? They went into a relationship because they liked each other, but as soon as they're living together all sorts of problems start popping up. Incompatible tastes in food. Incompatible habits. Incompatible hobbies. Incompatible schedules. There are all sorts of selfish excuses, and once the illusions about their partner fall away, they treat them like trash. I utterly despise such hopeless people. Smiling, Regulus happily extolled his views on love. Innocently, unreservedly, he raved about his indignation at those who scorned love. Regulus, who isn't a little selfish? But why the disillusionment? Someone you like may have different sensibilities than you, but why the disillusionment? How can people be so stupid? Isn't it absurd? That's why I select partners based on their faces. If my partner has a face I like, I won't grow disillusioned no matter what kind of person is behind it. Because I love that face. As long as that face is there, my love would never die. Amelia. Regulus, even if they don't put away their clothes after they take them off. Even if they're a murdering maniac who indiscriminately butchers children. Even if their cooking skills are atrocious. Even if they sold their own brother to pay off their debt and ran away. Even if they don't separate different colored laundry that'll color bleed into each other. Even if they're a psychopath who secretly kills animals for fun. Even if they have god-awful taste in clothing. Even if they're money-grubbing by nature. Even if they don't like to bathe and smells like a homeless person. Even if they seriously believe the apocalypse is coming and keeps on talking about it, I don't dislike them. One after another, Regulus pointed to the 53 women present, shouting. It wasn't clear which of those descriptions matched which one of the women. Nor could Amelia understand how he could claim to love only their faces and separate that from the person underneath. Regulus, I would never say it in past tense like I used to love. I love your face. Even if you're the witch who seeks to slaughter every person in this world in utmost, excruciating agony, I will not grow disillusioned. As long as I have your face. Amelia, what does that have to do with not smiling? Regulus, it's very simple. There are times when a girl who's normally cute and beautiful can suddenly turn repulsive the moment they smile, you know? As if I could allow such a thing. So, it's not only smiling, but crying as well. Either way, I won't allow your cute adorable face to be distorted in any way. So, no smiling. No crying. No sulking. Only adorableness is permitted. Holding Amelia's chin in his fingertips, Regulus quietly demanded. As for what would happen if she refused, those earlier events had already answered that question. But what made no sense was how he could commit such senseless atrocities when he claimed to love their faces. Amelia, you said you loved their faces and would never grow disillusioned. If so, then why did you attack this person earlier? Regulus, huh? Seeing Amelia pointing to number 184, Regulus tilted his head. Without lowering her arm, Amelia broke free from Regulus' fingers. Amelia, if I hadn't pulled her away, this person would certainly have died. This is also someone whose face you love and therefore took as your wife, correct? If that's true, then how could you do such a thing? Regulus, that's simple too. It's because, temperate as I am, she still managed to upset me. I don't ask for much, do I? But some people are just way too inconsiderate. I thought surely none of my wives is like that, but what else can I do when it's right in my face? Since there's no helping it, I had no choice but to fulfill out my obligations. Amelia, and so, you became disillusioned? You're contradicting what you said just now. Regulus, I'm not disillusioned. I still like her face, I still love her. Even if she's dead, that still doesn't change my enduring love for her. Don't you hear it often? Even when someone you love dies, that person lives on inside your heart because your love for that person endures and will not fade. That's exactly how it is with me. Regulus' twisted logic was impeccable. Impeccable without the slightest confusion, his logic was complete within his mind. Without the slightest room for rebuttal, it was perfect, flawless. In front of the speechless Amelia, Regulus furrowed his brows. Because he spotted a color of distrust within the silent Amelia's eyes. Regulus, I've actually been wondering for a while now. Do you maybe have a problem with me? If so, then that's really disappointing. I've already made concession after concession out of consideration for you, yet can't you appreciate my considerations at all? A person shouldn't be all talk, you know. If you have just the slightest consideration for other people's feelings, if you could just put yourself in other people's shoes, you wouldn't be like this, I don't think. If a person can't even make that modest effort, then I can't see how such a person can have any value whatsoever. It's disrespectful. More specifically, it's disrespectful to me. That's unforgivable. Amelia, I think marriage should be something really beautiful. Regulus, ha. Amelia, it's a ceremony that joins two people who love each other and want to be with each other. It's a really big deal to like someone and so, to find someone out of all the people in this world and have that person also like you back. Is an amazing thing, I think. Amelia in her bridal gown held a hand to her chest, while, listening, Regulus' face contorted with disbelief. The expressions of the wives in attendance, including number 184 at the altar, began to darken. They must be worried for her, Amelia figured. It was proof that they were compassionate, kind-hearted people after all. Amelia, why do you call your wives by their numbers? Regulus, why get caught up on names? Just like getting bogged down by the superficials, it's a complete misunderstanding of love. I don't need these superfluous embellishments to be confident that my love is real. And so, there is no need to debase myself with such vain trivialities. For love to be equal, one has to let go of those inessential aspects, don't you think? Amelia, I see. But, I don't dislike being called Amelia Tan by Subaru at all. Regulus, Subaru. Hearing a name he could not let slide, a color of displeasure rose on Regulus' face. But Amelia ignored the shift in Regulus' expression as she continued. Amelia, when Subaru calls me Amelia Tan, his voice is packed with feeling. And, occasionally, when he leaves out the tan, I can immediately tell that it's something special. I don't think it's pointless at all. Names should carry that kind of feeling. Regulus, hey, it's like you're just talking by yourself at this point, but who is Subaru? It's a person's name, isn't it? Actually, it's a man's name, isn't it? A girl who's about to marry mentioning a different man's name in front of the man she's about to marry, that goes against all common sense no matter how you look at it, doesn't it? Even if it's just some random stranger's name, it still hurts, you know. It hurts. You know? Amelia, he's not a random stranger. Subaru is my chosen knight, a person who calls me by my name and tells me that he loves me. Regulus, ha. Hearing Amelia's answer, a flood of blood-curdling aura gushed from Regulus's body. Sensing this, number 184 and the other wives immediately tried to run for it, but... Regulus, don't move. Anyone dares move, I'll cut their head off. Amelia. Regulus, I'll let you explain yourself. Try to choose your words carefully so I don't misunderstand. I don't want this wedding to turn into someone's funeral. You know? Heaving his shoulders, shuddering, Regulus suppressed his emotions as he spoke. Held in place by Regulus' threat, none of the attendants moved. But, without flinching, Amelia met his swelling aura head-on. Amelia, marriage should be between two people who love each other. But, I don't think this meets that criteria at all. Regulus. Amelia, because, I still don't know how to love a man as a woman. Even though Subaru tells me that he loves me, I still can't return his feelings, or even give him a straightforward answer. That's really unfair of me, and I know how much it hurts him. But... Regulus fell silent. But Amelia wasn't thinking about him. Anyone could tell that Amelia's eyes did not see him at all. Amelia, even though I don't know how to love someone, I'm sure someday I will. One day I will love someone as a woman. And I've already decided who I'll love when that day comes. That's why. Taking a breath and looking up at Regulus, Amelia spoke. Amelia, I can never be yours. Regulus, HK. Is that right? Well, I don't want a selfish bitch like you as my wife either. All the better, haha. Regulus' face bursted red at Amelia's declaration. In front of Regulus' reaching fingers, Amelia's whole body surged with mana to meet his attack. To counter his unknown destructive mechanism, her first action should be Just when their attacks were set to begin, a violent noise crashed throughout the chapel. Accompanying the sound was tremendous momentum as something shot straight into Regulus' body like a bullet. Crashing into Regulus in his white tuxedo and shattering upon impact was a wooden door panel, one of the two at the chapel entrance that they had just reinstalled. It had flown all the way from the entrance to hit Regulus. And... damn it, we kicked at the same time, but the result's not the same at all. What's with your leg strength? Sorry, I didn't adjust it properly. But it managed to hit the target I was aiming to hit, so it turned out alright, didn't it? The flashiness of the entry is nowhere near the same, okay? My kick only managed to open the door, but your kick landed a direct hit on the enemy. Two grumbling silhouettes appeared at the chapel entrance. One was a black-haired boy, and the other a red-haired youth. Amelia's eyes widened in astonishment, and in front of her, Regulus picked away the wooden shards like picking off insects. Standing there, unhurt, he was glaring at the two intruders with contempt in his eyes. Regulus, you certainly have the gall, crashing a sacred wedding ceremony. I don't remember inviting any male guests, but mind telling me who you are and what wedding presents did you bring? HHA. Met with Regulus bellow, the two at the entrance looked at each other. Then, giving each other a nod. Subaru, spirit knight without his spirit partner, Natsuki Subaru. Reinhard, descendant of the sword saint, Reinhard van Istria. Announcing his name, Reinhard took a step forward. Next to him, Subaru gave Amelia a wink before pointing at Regulus, saying, Subaru, I object to this marriage. And I'll be taking the bride with me. Chapter 49, thus opens the crusade against greed. Amelia, Subaru. A voice which seemed to summon Subaru, who had crashed through the entrance of the church and sprinted inside. It belonged to Amelia, who stood in front of an altar, clad in a wedding dress. Dressed in a snow-white dress, her long hair coiled in a braid on her head, she was too beautiful, lovely to a truly dazzling degree. In the right circumstance, Subaru, more than anyone else, would have wanted to admire Amelia's bridal attire. Subaru, I'll sort out my thoughts on EMT later. Seems like we crashed this wedding here. Reinhardt. The ceremony was already going awry, it seems. Though we'll still be regarded as the intruders here. From a ways away, Reinhardt snuck a glance at Amelia and Regulus as they glared at each other, and agreed with Subaru's mutters. The ceremony seemed to be proceeding poorly, offering them a perfect opportunity to intrude. Upon hearing their words, Regulus's already impatient face reddened with rage. He yanked at the front of his suit as his mouth twisted in a vicious pout. Regulus, sorry, though I feel for uninvited guests such as yourselves, this wedding will soon become a funeral anyway. The emotional preparation for such a joyous event to become one of lament, right, you needn't consider such matters anyway. Since you'll soon go from the ones bidding farewell to the ones who should be bid farewell to. Subaru, hey now, what are you going on about when you were rejected right before the wedding? And the bride is so fed up with you she's taking a Narita divorce. Show me a little shame here. Besides, didn't you hear me when I introduced this guy beside me? Regarding Regulus's murderous rambling, Subaru taunted him as he eyed Reinhardt. Surprised, Regulus exhaled an between his teeth. Regulus, who, the sword saint? I think I've heard of him once. Isn't that the moniker of some guy who knows of nothing but swinging a sword? What are you planning to do with that kind of guy? Could it be that you thought of him as some trump card? Aha, that's rich. Whether it be reputation from history or glory from the bloodline or whatnot, all that is nothing but old-fashioned traditionalism. Notions like that, when struck by a wave of progress, should crumble to ash. Isn't that just nature at work? You two, are you here to demonstrate? Reinhardt knows of nothing but swinging a sword, huh? It's funny that you'd say that. In truth, many expectations of my roles all stem from that one fact. But there's a slight problem here. Even faced with such arrogance, Reinhardt showed not a trace of annoyance. As he spoke, his hand crept quietly toward his waist. Sheathed there was a celestial sword, with engravings traced by the claws of the dragon itself, which Reinhardt always carried. However, as he clenched his palm around the hilt, he shook his head. Subaru, what's wrong, Reinhardt? Reinhardt, the dragon sword, is an unparalleled blade which has been passed down since the start of the Istria line, but it does have one flaw. It refuses to be unsheathed in the presence of any enemy it deems unworthy. Subaru, which means? Reinhardt, it seems that the sword has concluded that this enemy isn't worthy of being drawn against. Subaru, HK. Regardless of whether Reinhardt meant it this way, Regulus had received a rather humiliating evaluation. But Subaru had personally witnessed how, during a confrontation with Elsa, the sword hadn't made its appearance, and so he understood what Reinhardt meant. But, even with that in mind, Regulus's unflattering appraisal remained. Regulus, a sword saint who can't even draw his sword, why should I even bother with you? Know your place, scum. In the first place, I'm not even on the same level as you, who struggle with your ugliness and unfettered excuses, can't even be compared to one who has already achieved perfection. A fool who can't assure his self-worth without comparing himself to others has no right to face my divine self. Subaru, sounds like, you really do think you're all that. Facing the burning obscenity in Regulus's eyes, Subaru found himself genuinely surprised. Ignoring all his threats, and listening to only the heart of his speech. Subaru, hypocrisy is your forte, isn't it? Claiming to have achieved perfection, when you fall short in every comparison to anyone you find? Regulus, HK. You lowlife, don't you condescend to preach to my flawless self. Infuriated by Subaru's jeers, Regulus finally put his threats into action. With murderous intent, he slammed the ground in front of the altar. Instantly, the paved floor shattered with astonishing force. The torrent of destruction pummeled straight ahead, sweeping shards of wood and stone into its overwhelming embrace and shattering them even further. Subaru, Yua. Reinhardt, Subaru, over here. Just as the destructive wave neared him, someone caught him by the neck and yanked him to safety. A sudden gust of wind freed Subaru from the shackles of that torrent. This was Reinhardt's doing. With one hand, he pulled Subaru to his side as he evaded the attack. Gently depositing Subaru back on the ground, Reinhardt spun around, preparing to face Regulus. However, Regulus, don't move. Dare to try anything, and they'll all be dead in an instant. Reinhardt. Glaring at Reinhardt, who stood at attention, Regulus placed his hands on the walls of the church. Rows of elaborately dressed women watched him impassively. Clearly, they recognized the intent of his actions and the severity of the situation, but they only stood in their lines, indifferently accepting the surrounding chaos. Subaru, on that note, though I'd rather not look too far into it, who are these women? Regulus, all of them are my dear beloved wives. Lovely princesses who cherish and are cherished by me. Could you bear to allow such innocence to die? How could you be so cruel? Subaru, goddamn, I had a slight suspicion, but I can't establish a conversation at all. Had there ever any way he could? Regulus's rhetoric was completely illogical. To hold these women hostage, and yet to declare that they were his wives, existed in no realm of reason. The worst of it was that both the proclamation of innocence and the notion that Regulus would kill them were undoubtedly true. This illogical battle of hostages was indeed an extremely effective tactic. Regulus, it's not like I want them to die or anything. Even so, if you still resist further, I'll have no choice. I'll start at the beginning and go in order. Isn't forcing me to do something so awful just heartless? Subaru, not like that makes any sense at all, but I don't remember pushing you to that point. Regulus, don't nitpick. Maybe I'd be the one directly killing them. But you ignited this fuse. Your murderous intent would be the true weapon. You're using me as a prop. You're the real murderers. Don't evade responsibility. You heartless wife murderers. Obscenities burned in Regulus's eyes as he gnashed his teeth. The murderer who spouted his twisted rhetoric seemed not disturbed in the least by his revolting statements. While trying to buy time with dialogue, Subaru snuck a meaningful glance at Reinhardt. However, their volatile opponent held about 50 hostages in his grasp. If both walls collapsed at the same time, even Reinhardt wouldn't be able to prevent any casualties. Subaru. If it went on like this, they'd be stuck in stalemate. No, this was developing exactly the way Regulus hoped it would. However, the moment that he thought so. Emilia, have you forgotten about me already? Regulus, huh? Celeste lights began to dance from beside Regulus. In one instant, the light enveloped the entire church. In the next, a sharp sound was born. The light and sound chained into each other, intertwined and resonating, a simple, clear melody filling the temple. At the same time, a grand enchantment of ice shone in the center of the room. That celeste enchantment centered itself on the altar, forming a sanctuary of ice around the women who Regulus had taken hostage. In addition, the ice had frozen Regulus's legs to the ground, and a frozen sword pressed itself against his bare neck, a sword which extended from Emilia's hand. Emilia, you were far too careless there. Even I can't expect to just jump into a fight with you, so I prepared long and hard to freeze you like that. You lost. Regulus. I say, you're truly incapable of reading the atmosphere, aren't you? Right now, aren't I about to force them to back down? This is an important scene, showing that I'm righteously capable of facing despicable enemies with resolve. And my wives too, everyone clearly believes in and prays for my victory. Who do you think you are? Emilia, free all of us this instant. Although no one said it, some of them only stay with you because they're afraid. Even so, you should cherish them, since they're the ones who go out of their way to help you. Regulus, really, who do you think you're talking to? Looks like not making you a wife was wise indeed. Emilia? Subaru, Emilia, no. It's not enough to stop him. Normally, this would be the finale of the act. Emilia's judgment wasn't off. However, her opponent simply exceeded the limits of humanity. Regulus, TCH. With a sigh, Regulus began twisting his frozen limbs. That slight motion began to disintegrate the ice trapping his legs. As the rest of the ice began melting off, the frozen prison shattered to dust. Faced with this reversal, Emilia had nary the time to even draw breath before Regulus seized her by the neck and allowed her to dangle, suspended by only his hand. Regulus, such arrogance without even knowing how to keep yourself decent for a man. It doesn't matter that you're physically and mentally a virgin, your impure spirit defines you. You whore. You filthy slut. As if toying with my innocent heart weren't enough, you took it a step further and tried to force my hand. Never have I seen such an unforgivable woman. Emilia, cool, you. Regulus, your cute face, just how many men has it deceived? Just a brief smile, and you'd warm all their hearts. Just a small sound, and you'd win all their attention. Just a gentle touch, and they'd pour gift upon gift onto you. What a dirty woman. Subaru, stop. Take your hands off her, you fucker. Sighing to himself, Regulus's voice was filled with disdain as he spoke to Emilia, still caught in his grasp. His eyes, cold and inhuman, cut through Subaru's outrage at those unspeakable words. Regulus, how stupid are you, that you can't work this situation out? Or are you one of those fools who've already given up on understanding? Here am I ceaselessly trying to explain, but people like you, who thinks no thoughts of self-improvement and abandons all conscious thought, don't you think you're too wasteful of generosity? Do your best to stand in someone else's shoes, can't you even do that? Still playing cards like that, isn't your skill in interaction just too outrageous? Reinhardt, let Emilia-sama go, and I'll hear out your requests. From beside Subaru, who found himself speechless with rage, Reinhardt spoke to Regulus. Hearing that, Savage raised his eyebrows. Seemingly judging that conversation could come to flow more smoothly with Reinhardt than with the seething Subaru, Regulus. Regulus, not bad, that modest attitude. Precisely because people have all sorts of means of communication, if they want a topic to flow in the direction which they desire, they have to learn to use these methods effectively. Those who don't understand this, the majority, can only rely on brute force to see a message through. How off-putting. Shouldn't it be clear that matters which can be settled through negotiation don't require a show of strength? Well, people like that aren't impressive in the least. Fellows like those stand no chance against a pacifist like me, isn't that just nature? Reinhardt, no need to spin it so dramatically. Allow me to listen to your request. Witnessing Emilia-sama's suffering is painful for both me and my friend. Regulus, all right. Then I'll say it straightforwardly. Drop the sheath from your waist and come stand in front of the altar. As Emilia's face turned ashen, Regulus, in a deliberate motion, hoisted her higher. Her feet dangled in midair, and her sword of ice clattered to the ground. Faced with that display, Reinhardt hesitated no longer. He freed the dragon sword from his waist and handed it to Subaru. Subaru. If this were a play, I'd really have loved to draw this sword and end that bastard. Reinhardt, that's quite the idea, but, regrettably, I doubt you'd be able to unsheath it either. Rest assured, I will rescue Emilia-sama. Concluding their whispered conversation, Reinhardt complied with Regulus's orders. The sword saint stood, unarmed, in the middle of the temple, stopping when Regulus commanded, "Stop here." There were only about 5 meters left between the two, a distance which Reinhardt could cross in an instant. And yet, the issue lay in how Regulus currently held Emilia in his hands, and would obliterate her the second Reinhardt drew near. And the true nature of Regulus's invincibility had yet to be solved, even with the hints they possessed. Freeing himself from Emilia's prison, and setting off a path of destruction. Somewhere in those actions lay the principle behind his invincibility. Subaru. Holding his breath, Subaru monitored Reinhardt's movements carefully. At this moment, unable to find an opportunity to break the stalemate, he could only rely on Reinhardt. Eager as he was to leap into action, he knew that nothing he did would solve it. Reinhardt, as you wish, I'll stop here. What next? Regulus, let me kill you. Isn't it easy? It's a little cliché, I think so too. But are you here for my wives, or for this slut? I can't feel any sincerity in your thoughts. It's not that I want to force your hand. I just don't want to be misunderstood as a selfish and self-centered person. I'm just a normal man, satisfied with the simple joys of my everyday life. I do hope you fully understand. Reinhardt. Regulus, so, there's only one condition for me to free the hostages. You stand in this place and bear one strike from me. No defending yourself and no evasion. As long as you do this, I'll free everyone. Won't your unfair attack on me be forgiven that way? Reinhardt, one strike, yes. Faced with Regulus's proposal, Reinhardt stroked his chin as he meditated upon it. Watching his thoughtful figure, Subaru mentally shook his head desperately at the absurdity of the proposal. Regardless of how Regulus appeared, the power behind his attacks were obvious. An obscene power which could disintegrate seemingly anything. Even Reinhardt wouldn't be able to withstand such a strike. Even if he barely clung to his life, if he were left indisposed, this battle couldn't possibly continue. Reinhardt, I understand. I accept. However, contrary to Subaru's internal fracas, Reinhardt accepted the condition easily. Stunned, Subaru watched Regulus nod with approval. Regulus, a wise epiphany, I see. You have my respect. Although you're an enemy who tried to kill my wives, you seem to have at least some basic human humility. Subaru, hanging onto hostages even as some invincible person, and he doesn't feel as if he's in the wrong. At a glimpse, Regulus and his mellifluous, flowery words were truly disgusting. However, it seemed that Regulus didn't hear Subaru's spite, for he kept his hand laid on Emilia's neck as he turned his right hand to face Reinhardt. Subaru, Reinhardt, what are you thinking? Reinhardt, Subaru, as promised. Where I'm lacking, you'll find a way to fill in the gaps, right? Subaru, quit being so discouraging. Even the hardest battle has a chance of being won, was the answer that Subaru had been hoping to hear. However, before he had time to respond, Regulus waved an arm at Reinhardt. He couldn't see. Fingertips sliced through the air, as if tossing something at Reinhardt. However, the projectile was invisible. That attack might well very have been something like an unseen hand. Whether or not the speculation was true was left unanswered. Reinhardt's figure, which had been standing in front of Subaru, collapsed into a splatter of blood. His bisected body toppled to the ground, as if stuck by an oblique sniper, completely absent of its normal refined temperament. Subaru? Blood flowed forth from Reinhardt's fallen corpse, dyeing the crimson carpet a shade of aubergine. His body trembled like a spring, convulsing in its death throes. Finally, the moment came where even those movements subsided, and the corpse entered the realm of true death. This was Reinhardt van Astria's certain demise. Regulus, no matter how a person acted in life, death is a simple matter. Those who have accomplished great feats, those who have committed great sins, death treats them equally, stealing their lives in the same way. In this gravely unjust world, it's one of the few truly just parts of life. Having killed Reinhardt with only a wave of his hands, Regulus simply shook his head. The murderer wore a serene look, as if this had nothing to do with his own actions. Regulus, precisely because they know that the end will inevitably come, the living shouldn't pursue too much happiness while they live. Therefore, I am extremely satisfied with the low threshold of my happiness. And if I am greed, it's only because I'm always eager to appreciate what I do have, and what I will come to have. If I were never satisfied myself with the amount I have, I would never be happy in my lifetime. But fortunately, I was born with a unique gift. The sensibility of finding satisfaction in simple joys. Holding the arm which had killed Reinhardt to his chest, Regulus began to laugh. Then, Regulus, my satisfied self wants to know, are you satisfied with death? If so, congratulations on your death. If not, then those are the words of fate. Subaru, AAAAAAAUGH. Before the echo of Regulus's ridiculous words had even faded, Subaru sprung into action with a roar. He grabbed a chair and flung it at Regulus. Facing the projectile, Regulus swept it away with a single swipe, as if it were a mere insect. To say that the impact shattered the chair would be an understatement, and Regulus stepped away wearing an unpleasant expression. Regulus, compared to that graceful one, you really are both noisy and crude. Subaru, being a knight without a trace of knightliness happens to be my specialty. Treading on the carpet stained with Reinhardt's blood, Subaru unclasped his whip from his waist, and directed the tip toward Regulus. In response, Regulus simply made a show of tightening his grip on Emilia's neck as he lifted her. Regulus, are your eyes just for decoration? Can't you see that I have leverage here? Reinhardt, this is all very strange. According to what you promised, you should have liberated the hostages. Regulus, The instant he heard that sound, Regulus's face became stricken with horror. Tearing his gaze away from the center of the church, Subaru saw a slender, blood-stained figure, and felt his throat close with shock. Regulus, wah! Reinhardt, the divine protection of the Phoenix. With brevity, Reinhardt responded to the wavering Regulus, and three figures moved as one. Subaru leapt toward the altar, allowing his whip to yank a blonde-haired woman to safety. Even as her throat was being choked, Emilia kicked her sword of ice over to Reinhardt. Reinhardt, who had appeared out of nowhere, caught the sword and pointed it at Regulus. With the women shielded from the line of fire, the wielder of that blade hesitated no longer. In the next instant, sound vanished from the world. A brilliant blue light accompanied the shockwave that engulfed the church. Chapter 50, The Shackles of Love. When the supernova faded and Subaru's vision had returned to him, the state of the church had completely changed. Subaru, though I know I've said this before. Witnessing that scene with his own eyes, Subaru took a soft breath. In order to avoid inhaling the scattered dust particles and wood chips, he covered his mouth with his sleeve. Standing in the now open-air church, bathed in the evening breeze, Subaru stomped on the floor and jabbed a finger at the man in front of him. Subaru, sure enough, this guy's a fucking monster. Reinhardt, though I've said this before, how depressing. Even my heart would be hurt by such words. Subaru, is this really an occasion to complain about heartache? Your physical wounds are obviously the bigger issue here. The hell do you think this is? In the face of Reinhardt's apparent aberrance, Subaru couldn't help but frustratedly bury his face in his hands. Reinhardt returned him a wry smile, as the sword of ice in his right hand shattered and dissipated. Although it has only been swung once, being able to withstand the sword saint's might indicated that its durability was deserving of praise. The one who'd made that sword, Emilia, was currently being embraced by Reinhardt's left arm. In that instant, he'd freed Emilia's neck from Regulus's grasp, keeping her safe. As a result, Regulus was the only one who'd suffered that bombardment. Aside from that initial blow, everything seemed to have worked out. Subaru, on that note, what a close call we had. Hey, are you okay? 184. The object of his concern was the woman who he'd yanked out of danger, just as Reinhardt had, before chaos had fallen. Although the golden-haired woman was rather beautiful, her empty eyes and expressionless face gave off a foreboding air. Sure enough, the shock of the situation had gotten to her, was Subaru's thought, and so he met the eyes of the woman as she sat. Subaru, sorry if we surprised you, but in order to take advantages of his weaknesses, we didn't really have any other choice. If you're hurt anywhere, tell us and we can help fix you up. 184. Although Subaru called out to her, she still gave no reaction. Although this situation was worrying indeed, he couldn't worry about just her and her alone. Leaving the still-sitting woman where she was, he strode toward the altar, or rather, where the altar had once stood. This place, which strongly resembled what Subaru knew as a church, had been completely desecrated by Reinhardt. The front of the building where the altar and the corridor leading to a side room had been located, had all been demolished in the wake of the supernova. All that had barely survived were the very edges and the back of the building. Fortunately, due to the protection of Emilia's wall of ice, the seated women had remained untouched. Subaru ran where Emilia and Reinhardt were standing near the crumbling altar. Stepping out of Reinhardt's arms, Emilia immediately gave a pained cough. Subaru, Emilia-tan, are you okay? Emilia, HK, I'm fine. It's just that my throat feels itchy. Subaru, how are you? Did anything strange happen? Did that creep lick your face or anything? And this wedding dress is spectacular, did he put it on you? Damn, that fucker, I won't let him go. But this dress truly is amazing. No matter what you wear, you look cute, Emilia-tan. Emilia, Subaru, calm down a bit. I can't quite figure out what you want say. Faced with the frantically concerned Subaru, Emilia retreated gently. Looking at his distressed appearance as he carefully ascertained that she was safe and sound, Emilia sighed with a smile. Emilia, right, thank you for coming to save me. I knew all along that you'd come. Subaru, I also knew that Emilia-tan believes in me and would wait for rescue. But if I'd crashed the wedding even a little later, who knows what could've. Emilia, it doesn't matter. I wouldn't have married him. If I were to marry, it would have to be someone I like. Subaru, that's great. Really reassuring. Then, this person you like. Emilia, Reinhardt. Your injury, how is it? Just as Subaru prepared to go on an offensive strike, Emilia caught sight of Reinhardt and cried out at him. Seeing Emilia's interest in Reinhardt where it mattered, Subaru paused and scowled. The Reinhardt who'd saved Emilia unexpectedly, he'd sustained a heavy injury. The front of the white clothes had been almost exaggeratedly torn and stained entirely with red. Witnessing this explosive scene, Emilia sucked in a cold breath. Subaru, how brutal. You sure this is fine? Emilia, yes, what a grievous wound. Let me take a look, I'll heal you. Reinhardt, thank you. But don't worry about it. The wound has begun to heal. Responding to the fretting, flustered pair with a smile, Reinhardt wiped at the blood with his own white sleeves. And on his clean chest, the traces of the injury were indeed disappearing. The wound was completely gone, leaving only Reinhardt's pristine skin. Subaru, the wounds vanished. Hey, what happened just now? You hid it even from me. Did you sneakily hide some blood packets on your person or something? Reinhardt, and by just now, you mean? Subaru, stop putting on airs, or are you being for real right now? Just now with Regulus's hostage situation, I didn't know how you planned to deal with it, so I just watched silently. But how did you survive? Just tell me already. Reinhardt, let's put it this way, watching silently was a huge help. Thanks for taking care not to set him off. Even faced with Subaru's impatience, Reinhardt responded in an even tone. Thinking that he was just trying to maintain a lighter atmosphere, Subaru sighed. Subaru, I just thought that since it's you, there must have been some trick up your sleeve. But seeing you fall in that shower of blood had me thinking you really were dead. How terrifying. Reinhardt, even so, you reacted in time. I'm very happy you had such faith in me. Subaru, who told you to give this dramatic speech on shortcomings and whatnot? He lightly knocked Reinhardt's shoulders, responding to that guilelessness with coarse words. Listening to their conversation, Emilia's eyes widened with surprise. Emilia, only with those words, you worked that entire scheme out? Subaru, Emilia-tan, when you passed the sword of ice to Reinhardt while I was moving, that's what happened too. Reinhardt, that really was a huge help. Not having a weapon on hand and having to strike his body directly was an uneasy notion, for some reason. But I'm glad that it worked out. Subaru, yep, it ended with half the building collapsing. Please take responsible for it. Well, this also counts as a survival flag. Having had numerous encounters with Elsa in the past, Subaru couldn't be too optimistic. Now, while talking like this, there is no slack in his alarm toward Regulus. Subaru, so Reinhardt, the correct answer to the mystery of that scene is. Did you use an avatar? It couldn't be some kind of cloning technique. Please don't tell me that in addition to being a knight, you're a ninja as well. Reinhardt, although I don't know what a ninja is, I'm sure it's not such a huge mystery. This divine protection of the phoenix is just a blessing that can be used to revive the dead. So your observation that I looked like I was dead was correct, I was just a little bit dead. Subaru, just a little bit dead, my ass. Did that mess you up, or are you just an idiot? Being met with such an unexpected answer sent Subaru into another frenzy. Dying under the divine protection of the phoenix, or whatnot, wasn't it just making a mockery of death? Those were words better left unsaid to Subaru, or, rather, perhaps it was better to say that only Subaru could speak like that. Subaru, what are you doing, stealing my niche and all that? Reinhardt? Sorry. But at the time, I felt that it was the most effective way to deal with the Sin Archbishop. And it did in fact work rather smoothly. But, if possible, I'd prefer to avoid dying again. Emilia, dying in order to save only me, I can't help but feel guilty. Subaru, cool. Emilia, Subaru? What's with the expression? Struck by the force of her reply, the psychological burden of those words was quite something. Moreover, it seems that this dialogue could continue no further. Reinhardt, Subaru. Subaru, understood. Narrowing his blue eyes, Reinhardt called for Subaru. Subaru raised his head at the call, and Emilia glanced to where Reinhardt was looking. The predator, emitting an ominous aura, filled their line of sight. He stood atop the collapse's remains of the church, overlooking the other three. White hair, white clothes, and a blank expression, this predator, made of white, snorted and spoke. Regulus, leaving me out, and just bantering and laughing in a place like this. Speaking of which, how can you stand to maintain an air of normalcy? Isn't that too inhumane? Unless you felt like you've just stepped on an ant or something. Is blowing me away no different from stepping on a bug? Well, how about it? As he fanned the flames of his own exaggerated outrage, Regulus leapt from the smoldering wreckage to the remains of the church. As he landed, he straightened out the coat of his white suit, brushed at the sleeves of his shirt, and readjusted the legs of his matching trousers, before turning his narrowed gaze upon them. His body was unchanged from Reinhardt's blow. Whether injury or filthiness, neither showed even a trace on his form. Reinhardt, I see, as I heard from Subaru, you truly are a fearsome opponent. Emilia, just now, the Sin Archbishop that you mentioned, Subaru, he's the one? Regarding him, Reinhardt and Emilia each offered their own input. Hearing this, Regulus turned a spiteful glare upon Emilia. Regulus, that's right. I'm the witch cult Sin Archbishop of Greed, Regulus Corneas. Speaking of which, without knowing even the identity of the other party, you tried to go through a wedding ceremony. This is a problem that precedes not having an awareness of being a wife. Impudent, immoral, iniquitous. Really, your deficiency as a woman knows no bounds, honestly. Emilia, iniquitous and whatnot, you didn't tell me anything at all. Impure and immoral are also groundless. And you're a Sin Archbishop of the witch cult. Which cult, which cult? Faced with the resentfully cursing Regulus, Emilia was about to refute his points before she suddenly sank into silence. Her hand on her head, Emilia's eyebrows lifted as if she were thinking hard. Emilia, the witch cult's Sin Archbishop, have you ever faced me before? Regulus, ha. How would I know? Although right now, if you were to say that our meeting was fate, that would just be a ridiculous farce. Such a face of rare sweetness, but in spirit you're such a degenerate, how endlessly infuriating, you. Subaru, the fuck are you rambling on about aimlessly, you bastard? Aiming at the endlessly ranting Regulus's face, Subaru flicked his whip. Under that impact, Regulus's face snapped to the side, and he snarled with fury. Unsurprisingly, his face bore no trace of the blow. Subaru, at this point, for real, if we can't solve the mystery of his invincibility, we can't secure out victory. Reinhardt, whether at close range or from afar, every attack is negated. Even Emilia-sama's magic does nothing to stop him. There has to be some kind of trick to defeating him. Subaru, watch out for yourself, alright. Subaru, why does it sound like you're saying something acrimonious? Reinhardt patted that confused Subaru's shoulder briefly, then he vanished. In the next moment, Reinhardt slammed directly into the predator's body, sending him sprawling backward. Regulus, ha. With a cry, Regulus, who'd had no time to brace himself, flew backward and slammed into a mountain of debris, further causing it to collapse and disintegrate. Reinhardt, his opponent will me. Hopefully you can solve the mystery of his invincibility as quickly as you can. I'll buy time for you. Subaru, right, buying time is nice and all, but wouldn't it be better to just defeat him in one fell swoop? Reinhardt, if I could, I would have done so already. Take these women to safety. If they remain here, they'll be dragged into the battlefield. Emilia, wait, Reinhardt. Although it's probably not too effective, use this. Calling out to stop Reinhardt in his tracks, was Emilia, holding a sword of ice freshly shaped with magic. Emilia, I've been concentrating super hard to make this, it should be a little more durable than the last one. Reinhardt, my thanks is inexpressible. Accepting her proffered blade, Reinhardt offered her his ceremonious gratitude in return. Then he turned and leapt away from the ruins of the church to Regulus. In a single step, he vanished from Subaru's field of vision, crossing an impossible distance. Immediately following his disappearance, a shockwave slammed into Subaru's skin. As he bathed in this feeling, he turned to look at Emilia. Subaru, Emilia-tan. In order to avoid getting caught up in Reinhardt's battle, for time being, help get these women somewhere safe. They all have to leave. Speaking of which, are they all married to Regulus? Both now and before, the uniformity of the women trapped in the wall of ice felt unnatural. Being Regulus's wives made them all members of the witch cult. At a glance, there were more or less 50 of them. If they attacked as one, how could Subaru handle them without Beatrice's help? Only now had he begun to worry. However, Emilia shook her head, denying this uneasiness. Emilia, it's fine. Although they are his wives, most of them are probably only here through force and coercion. So don't worry. Subaru, right, yeah. If they were a threat, Reinhardt wouldn't have overlooked. Watch out. Just now, flying missiles have started attacking us. How dangerous. Outside of the church, Reinhardt and Regulus were engaging in a battle that resided far beyond the limits of humanity. The wreckage and stone fragments, swept away by various impacts, flew like missiles. If he were to be struck by one, there was no guarantee that he'd stay intact. Although Reinhardt had an absolute advantage when it came to offense, as long as the nature of Regulus's power remained a mystery, that advantage faded bit by bit. Subaru needed to come up with a countermeasure before the predator could overwhelm him. Emilia, hey, are you okay? No injuries? During his moment of reflection, Emilia had started shaking the blonde woman by the shoulders. That was the same woman Subaru had just rescued using his whip. Based on her position in front of the altar, her status seemed unique. However, her expression was just as blank, bearing not even the faintest trace of irritation. Looking up at Emilia, the woman shook her head slowly. 184, we have to stay here. If you want to escape, please take care. Emilia, stay, why? Are your feet injured? Then I'll heal you right away. Just this wall of ice isn't enough to keep you safe. Hurry up, we have to leave. 184, please allow me to refuse. Only you can leave this place. Emilia, why? Staying here will involve you in the fight. Regulus will, regardless of your presence, attack anything he wants to. Please, hurry and come with us. 184, Master Sama did not give instructions to leave. Amelia's persuasion was interrupted by the woman's cold voice, conveying her feelings, equally devoid of warmth. Her cold, frozen gaze met Amelia's own amethyst eyes. 184. Not listening to husband Sama will make him angry. If that happens, there's only one possible result. Amelia, that's not. Subaru shared Amelia's speechless reaction. To call her determined would be wrong, for she had no selfhood. To call her unwavering would be wrong, for she had no resolve. Her speech and attitude spoke of a heavy despair that had long become inexorable. She, or rather, they had given up long ago. Those hearts, shattered by Regulus, could no longer consider anything other than him. This was a cursed brutality which no longer required words or actions. Subaru, Regulus's opponent, is the sword saint, Reinhardt. I know you're terrified of him, but Reinhardt's not going to have any issue killing him. So, don't stay here. There's no need to endanger your lives. 184. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. Sword saint? Please, don't kid. How could anyone match husband Sama? Regulus Corneas? The woman dismissed Subaru's reassurances with naught but contempt. That was her first time showing any sort of genuine emotion. The scornful dismissal of an adult, looking down upon a child's ignorant delusion. Only then did Subaru understand the true nature of this distorted relationship. The wives of Regulus Corneas had absolute faith in their husband. Even the knowledge that his opponent was the sword saint, Reinhardt, did nothing to loosen the shackle of the curse that no one could undo. The unparalleled, overwhelming power Regulus possessed held complete dominion over the hearts of his wives. The wife trusts her husband, and the husband maintains a firm grip on his wife's heart. In a sense, it was the ideal state of a relationship. But that serene surface gave way to inner distortions. Subaru, damn it. Subaru came to the painful realization that mere words would not move them. The women before him all unanimously believed this. The lack of dissent and dead silence only served to prove so. To force them to leave would take nothing less thorough than knocking all of them out and moving them one by one, but they were pressed for the freedom to take such drastic actions. Subaru, Reinhardt. Change of plans. Do what I mentioned before. Dispelling the idea of persuading the women, Subaru climbed atop the collapsed church and called out to Reinhardt, who was currently defying the law of gravity as he dashed across the side of a building. He flicked his eyes to the side. Reinhardt, are we speeding up the battle? Hey, Subaru, have you ensured the women's safety? Subaru. The hell? Where's this sound coming from? Reinhardt, this is the divine protection of telepathy, which can spread my voice to those within a certain range. Subaru, could you stop being so superhuman? Even to the borderline non-combatant Subaru, Reinhardt's movements were clearly beyond the scope of human comprehension. Running and kicking off from a wall, Reinhardt flew into the air and spun rapidly. The instant before he landed, he allowed his clothing to spread, slowing down his momentum, and swung his slender legs to send a blade of wind slicing toward the ground. Sweeping up both dust and brick, the wave slammed directly into the predator waiting at the end. Regulus's figure, unable to stay standing, was blown away again. Subaru, that murder circus just now, what was it? Reinhardt, he attacks by throwing stones or sand. There's really no gap of safety between the particles being scattered around. Subaru, in my case it sounds like I want to hide from the rain. More importantly, move the battlefield. Those women won't move. They're so terrified of Regulus, they don't dare to. Reinhardt, I see, understood. Then, allow me to try. Lowering his voice, Reinhardt leapt lightly toward Regulus. Climbing to his feet once again, Regulus stomped on the ground, sending bits of wood and sand flying. However, with economic movements, Reinhardt evaded and drew Amelia's ice sword, slashing at Regulus and sending him flying once more. The screaming of the predator overlapped with the crisp sound of the shattering of the ice blade. Amelia, Subaru. What are we planning to do? Subaru, lead that bastard away from here. Wow, Amelia-tan is bold. Amelia, this dress is pretty, but really inconvenient. Standing in front of Subaru was Amelia, who had yanked away part of her dress. The restrictive parts of the white wedding dress had been daringly torn open, revealing more of Amelia's white thighs than should have been visible in an enticing sight. Amelia, it doesn't matter. Anyway, what do you want from Reinhardt? Subaru, a plan we thought of before the battle, since we don't know what the true extent of Regulus's power is. We'll have to test possible weaknesses one by one. Amelia nodded as Subaru retrieved Reinhardt's loved sword from the church. Then, he and Amelia rushed straight toward Reinhardt's battlefield. Regulus, gah. Fucker, quit jumping up and down. Cursing loudly, Regulus waved his both hands up and down. His target was Reinhardt, who weaved rapidly back and forth, and his weapon was the plentiful gravel laying about. Normally, bits of gravel could only serve to blind an opponent. People who used it as a weapon had character is unworthy of praise, but if Regulus were the wielder, the power of this despicable tactic would skyrocket. Buildings began to crumble where the gravel came into contact with them, and the surrounding scenery fell into ruination. Reinhardt, TCH. Watching the cataclysmic destruction unfolding in front of him, Reinhardt launched into a dramatic evasion. He lowered his body as if he were planning to drop into a crawl, and sped into motion. Contrary to his seemingly unsightly appearance, he was moving so fast that he'd ventured beyond the reach of ordinary people. And thus, Regulus, who was no different from an ordinary person, had no way of catching up to Reinhardt. Regulus, damn. Hey! Where'd you run off to, looking like a bug? Faced with the threat of losing his target, Regulus attacked indiscriminately from all directions. The rising of goosebumps on skin a sure sign that approaching would be terribly dangerous, a survival instinct everyone was born with, warning against enemies close at hand. In actuality, this has little to do with the presence of a clear threat. Any living creature was susceptible to this feeling. Regulus was no exception. The tingling of his nerves, all throughout his body, tipped him off that something was wrong. Only, this incredible threat was approaching from all directions, an oppressive ring of menace. Regulus, you fucker, what in the world are ye? Reinhardt, I am but a knight to the king candidate Feltsama. Please also be sure to give her all your support. Regulus. With a line that may or may not have been a joke, a steady voice spoke. The shocked Regulus took a sharp impact on his head, perhaps it was smashed by steel. The weapon had been bent completely out of shape, and a squeaking sound indicated that it had been cast aside. Humiliated, Regulus glared at the ground as he bit his lip. With crisp footwork that prevented ease of attack, Reinhardt assumed his stance. The offensive and defensive battles of the Sword Saint and Greed were clear to both parties to the confrontation. Exerting the conventional combat power, the strength of Reinhardt, which could toy with even the deadliest of Sin archbishops, could not be said to be of world. But even so, Regulus, the one to win will be me, can't you understand? Although I have no clue how well you've been doing with this violent power that can only think of oppressing others, someone like you, whose happiness is built upon the sacrifice of others, will be stopped here. With this power, how many people's lives have you trampled upon? That greed really is despicable. Reinhardt, that really is distressing to hear. It is true that, because of me, some have lost sight of their happiness. Without question, the reason why I do what I do is none other than for the sake of atonement. In the face of Regulus's ridiculous rhetoric, Reinhardt's eyes narrowed slightly. Seeing the Sword Saint's responsive movement, Regulus widened his own. Regulus, the hell is this? Some kind of you don't need to say it because I already know ploy? I'm aware of my own sins. I'm aware, so in trying to fix my bad qualities, I tell you. So it's an attempt to let it all be water under the bridge? Jokes can only go so far. No one's holding any expectations to what you'll do in the future. All that matters is what you did in the past. Your feet were once planted on the ground, where someone licked your soles. To such a person, whether you help tens of thousands or hundreds of millions of people, it's all meaningless. Sinner, just die. You, able only to beg of others, stop pretending to be a good person already. Reinhardt, talking to you, I really do get the feeling of being shown a mirror. This must be the reason why Subaru told me to avoid seriously lending an ear to you. Regulus, speaking of which, that guy over there, is that this Subaru? The rotten man who snatched my bride from me, that hateful bastard. Even if she ended up being a dirty whore, his transgression can never be forgiven. To those who try to take what belongs to others, due punishment is Yua. Halfway through his tirade, Regulus's world suddenly spun upside down. At that moment, Reinhardt had dropped his stance and grabbed Regulus's left ankle, spinning him around. A rotating field of violent destruction, Regulus's back hit a wall. Under that impact, a shower of dust scattered as Regulus's body, still being swung back and forth, crashed through and collapsed a building. Reinhardt, although direct contact with you feels rather dangerous, but I'll try to get it over with as soon as possible. Regulus, what, are you doing this so you can call him a friend? What a goddamn fake show of hypocrisy, your debased self naturally has no decent friends. With someone known as a rapist, sharing a friendship is. Reinhardt, dealing with you really is unbearable, doubly so when you slander my friends. The wind suddenly wrapped around their bodies, and the sense of rapid rising followed closely. If you were to take a glimpse, the figures of the two are suspended in the midst of the night sky, and right next to them, the full moon shines brightly. At that place, where the light of the moon lay within reach, Regulus sked. Regulus, so, it is not a matter of strength at all. Dropping me from such a height will end this, you can't be truly naive enough to believe that. Are you playing me for a fool? Reinart, indeed, I could try slamming you down and lodging you in the earth, but those weren't my instructions. Regulus, what are you? In midair, without any foothold, Reinhardt alternated between drifting up and down by shifting his body slightly. Regulus, still being gripped by his foot, was subjected to centrifugal force and, still being swung by Reinhardt, his eyes widened as he glanced downward. Regulus, no way. Reinhardt, what's coming seems to be known as the first wave. I hope that I will not see you again afterwards. It was a rare sarcastic line from Reinhardt, but Regulus had no leeway to pay attention to it. Reinhardt, with all his might, swung Regulus downward. Whipping through the air, Regulus's dense form sped into the canal directly beneath him with the momentum of a bullet. Regulus, bathed by the wind, could only watch as the surface of the canal approached. Regulus, the only threat is the water. Rotating back and forth as he sailed downward, Regulus stretched out his hands, intending for them to slam into the water. The unprepared Reinhardt, hovering defenselessly in the sky, would follow in a moment. Then, that calm face of his could be shattered in a single blow. At that thought. Subaru, Emilia, go. Emilia, Ulhuma. Hearing the voices of that hateful man and woman, the lingering light of the corner of his eye immediately illuminated that detestable pair. A black-haired boy gesturing with a finger, and a silver-haired girl who chanted quietly. In the next moment, falling from above Regulus, were icicles shooting forward at a speed which matched his momentum. The icicles caught his clothed limbs, accelerating his fall. Further, the last one slammed directly into Regulus's back, freezing his body solid. A total of 5 icicles bound Regulus's extremities, using his body as a freezing point as it plummeted into the canal. Immediately, a hand of ice stretched forward, centering on where Regulus had fallen, tracing the flow of the water. The canal was sealed in an icy tomb, without so much as a single opening. Subaru, Operation Splash, nicknamed Operation I, was a complete success. Reinhardt, I hope it was effective. Next to Subaru, who gazed into the frozen waterway, landed Reinhardt, cloaked in moonlight. After having thrown Regulus from the sky, the trajectory of that fall should have meant that he would not be able to avoid the falling water, but in fact even a droplet brushing him would have been a miracle. That Reinhardt could move so well in midair was hardly even surprising. Emilia, sealing his range of movement and tossing him into water, freezing it afterward. There's no way he'll ever surface again, is there? From Reinhardt's other side, Emilia stared into the water. The one who had drawn up the battle plans had been Subaru, and the one who had facilitated them had been Reinhardt. However, Emilia had been the one who had pushed Regulus into a state of desperation. Even if the other party had been an unreasonable murderer, Emilia still wore a rather timid expression. If everything proceeded smoothly, he'd soon be naught but a drowned corpse. Emilia felt that she'd overstepped. This feeling was not without reason. Subaru. Regarding that Emilia, Subaru crossed his arms in consideration. Although he felt rather sorry for her, to have Regulus drowned was the best outcome of this. If that weren't possible, leaving him in a state mirroring death would be best. However, the worst possibility must also be expected. For example, Subaru, Reinhardt. Reinhardt, Tisk. Right in front of their eyes, the ice's surface cracked, and immediately after, a jet of water spouted up, blasting straight toward them. At the sight of the spouting water, Reinhardt grabbed both Emilia and Subaru as the jet of water closed in on them. His arms wrapped around their waists, he jumped backwards in one leap. After they were well out of the reach of the jet of water, Reinhardt narrowed his eyes. Reinhardt, it seems that it hasn't been settled yet. Subaru, right. On that note, this guy, he's really bad news. Reinhardt and Subaru had each fixated on something different. Reinhardt was watching the figure standing atop a drifting piece of ice, whereas Subaru was looking at the outcome that had been caused by the jet of water which that figure had capriciously unleashed. Water droplets flew about, pouring down near where Subaru and the others were standing. The outcome was nothing so charming as the pitter-patter stopping and just dampening the earth below. Each part of the spray bored thoroughly into the earth, carving through the ground as if biting with the force of a gigantic beast. This destructive power was not inferior to that of stones and sand thrown by Regulus. Which is to say, whether wielding solid or liquid, Regulus's attack power stayed constant. Emilia. His body, it's not frozen at all. Just like what happened at the church. Muttering this, Emilia looked at Regulus, still perched atop that piece of drifting ice. Subaru had entrusted her with the task of freezing his body and limbs using magic. As per Subaru's instructions to show no mercy, the icicle pierced right through the middle of Regulus' body and limbs. Such an act should have left him more than half dead. However, when he'd fallen into the water, the tip of the icicle hadn't penetrated his body, and so Regulus was merely frozen on the surface, just as he had been in the church. To Regulus, neither freezing nor magic was effective. Like projectiles and strikes, he could also invalidate those types of attacks. Subaru, although, when he shrugged off Wrath's flames, I did suspect a little, the fundamental of his invincibility is a unilateral specialization cancelling out any physical or magical attacks. Reinhardt, is there something I can try to confirm with combat? Subaru, about that, if we don't close in to try. Interrupting Subaru's response to Reinhardt's words was a change in the canal. A vortex appeared on the water's frozen surface, a distance from where the crack was. Gradually, its momentum increased, pulling in the drifting ice which Regulus occupied. And then, Subaru, water dragon. Leaping from the heart of the maelstrom, the dragon bared its fangs at Regulus, who was standing on top of the ice. Usually occupying the waterways surrounding the city, was one of the domesticated water dragons. The supposedly docile water dragon opened its jaws wide, aiming to lunge at Regulus's slender back. Perhaps, even that water dragon had received quite a bit of Wrath's influence, a tragedy that never should have taken place. However, its jaws did not have a chance to close. Subaru, HK. Subaru's throat involuntarily clogged up at the gruesome spectacle unfolding before him. What happened in this moment? How could it even be described? The water dragon's maw jerked out of place at the very moment they had clamped down onto Regulus. As if in a game of Daruma Otoshi, the water dragon's lower jaw was dislocated. Keeping its momentum as it flew toward Regulus, its mandible shifted. A maw which should have dragged Regulus into the canal. However, unable to correct the dislocation, it split in two with a great shudder. The halves of bisected water dragon poured blood into the water as they were submerged. After a moment, an exaggerated amount of blood and viscera, that once been a water dragon floated to the surface. This had been its gruesome demise. Reinhardt, Emilia-sama. If possible, could you make me a spear? Emilia. Ha. Reinhardt, a spear. A spear of ice, please. I've troubled you. Faced with the same sight, Reinhardt muttered this to the befuddled Emilia. Connecting the dots, Emilia hurriedly focused her mana. After several unsuccessful attempts, eventually Emilia created an ice spear and handed it over to Reinhardt. After testing its balance. Reinhardt, excuse me. Grasping the ice spear, he drew his wrist back to aim Regulus, and let the missile fly. The spear flew true. However, it wasn't the sharp tip that had been pointed at Regulus. As it turned to its side, its shaft scored a direct hit. But the fact of matter was that when the shaft of the spear crashed against Regulus, it fell straight into the waterway, broken into two. Emilia, what is the meaning of this? Subaru, I see. I get it, Reinhardt. Seeing the state of the broken spear, Emilia tilted her head in confusion. From beside her, Subaru grasped the meaning behind why Reinhardt had done this, shuddering at its outcome. Hearing Subaru's acknowledgement, Reinhardt nodded and said, Reinhardt, Emilia-sama, did you see what happened to the spear when it hit him? Emilia, it broke, right? A spear of ice is different from a real one, so it's natural for it to have broken in two after it struck with such force. Reinhardt, not quite, the spear didn't break. The part of the spear that hit him is missing. The part that hit him is missing, separated. The spear was broken not into two, but three. Reinhardt's explanation served as an answer to what had happened to the spear and with the water dragon. Neither object, upon contact with Regulus, managed to penetrate his body. With an ordinary barrier, the collision would have caused a projectile to bounce off or shatter from the impact, but neither had happened. Regulus's body literally rejected anything that collided with it. Regulus, what cluelessly naive expressions you're all wearing. This is just how it is. Just as the three reached a consensus, Regulus's voice suddenly sounded from the ice. That calm voice made it sound as if he were just whispering to himself. The instant Subaru thought that, an unpleasant shock hit him in the back. Regulus, understanding. All of you really understand nothing. It won't amount to anything. You have no chance. You'll achieve nothing. No matter how much you strain and struggle, it's meaningless. Why can't you see that? I'll say it to you, show it to you, force you to see, you could never understand. Regulus whispered to himself as he leapt from the ice. Having jumped forward only slightly, his body plummeted into the canal. For a moment, his figure vanished. However, with one hand on the edge of the canal, he pulled himself from the water, climbing back onto the street. Then, once again, he squared his gaze at those who were watching him. Reinhardt, his body isn't wet in the slightest. His breathing remains unchanged. Naturally, the fragments of ice need not even a mention, nor has a single drop of blood splashed onto him. His clothes are completely clean, and equally unstained by water. Observing Regulus, Reinhardt gave a quick report. Upon hearing it, Subaru nodded and tried to consider all his concerns even as he suppressed his horror. It seemed that everything he'd intended to confirm with combat had been checked. However, there was not a trace of good news. This was the worst forecast possible. Reinhardt, Subaru, my sword. Subaru, oh, right. At Reinhardt's request, Subaru quickly handed over the sword that he'd been holding all along. As Reinhardt gently tested the handle of his beloved sword, Emilia looked on from the side, wondering timidly. Emilia, can the sword be unsheathed? Reinhardt, no, the handle is still fixed. It seems that it won't be obedient, but there's no other weapon that can be used to confront him. Emilia, since your sword can't be drawn, what are you going to do? Attack him directly with the sheath? Reinhardt, not exactly. But that's not too far off. With nary a trace of tenseness in his voice, Reinhardt stepped forward. He placed himself in front of Subaru and Emilia, shielding them from Regulus's line of sight. Reinhardt, Subaru, please allow the task of buying time to be handed over to me. You can continue to decipher his power. Subaru, feels like the difficulty just rose a setting. But I'll be cheering for you. Emilia, I'll also cheer. Reinhardt, then, I will also cheer. Go. As soon as the sound of his voice fell, Reinhardt flew forward. Regulus, who had been kept waiting, met him with only calmness. Regulus, I say, did you not see? If not fate of the dragon, then the spear. Is your imagination truly so lacking? Reinhardt, only paying attention to a coin by your foot will draw your attention away from what is important, as my master once said. Regulus, is that so? Regulus's sigh, deep and uninterested, overlapped with Reinhardt's opening strike. The sound of the muscles and bones being penetrated by something sharp tore through the air, and Subaru's throat couldn't help but stiffen. He watched as Reinhardt gripped the scabbard, slamming the hilt of the sword into Regulus. Regulus, oh, seems that you don't even have a strategy. The sound of these blows was different from the fate of the water dragon and the ice gun. At least Reinhardt's beloved sword would not break upon hitting Regulus, no matter what he did. However, Regulus gave no reaction to the attacks. Reinhardt's previous attacks, although dealing no damage, had at least been enough to send him flying. Now, even that effect was lost. Reinhardt, feel free to be proud. You are the second to force me to use Dragon Sword Reed. Regulus, I can't hear anything but belittlement. Do you truly disregard me so? This isn't the nature of sword, is that what you mean? Such a denigrating gaze, such disparaging words, to one as enlightened as myself, it's only natural that I'd understand. Reinhardt, that's all rather odd. As he provoked Regulus, Reinhardt weaved in and out of close proximity. Faced with those murderous fingertips, Reinhardt's evasive movements put his whole body into motion. Suddenly, his legs stopped moving. No, they were kept from moving. Reinhardt collapsed onto his knees, kneeling in place. His right calf had split open, spilling forth copious amounts of blood. Subaru, were you hit? What happened? Subaru cried out, and Reinhardt frowned through his confusion. Neither Subaru, observing from a distance, not Reinhardt, from right up close, could discern what had happened. The one who had posed this question gave his evaluation of failure. Regulus, with your inhuman eyesight and reactions, you can escape the bits gravel and water. But you're too naive, aren't you? If you truly want to confront me, prevent me from breathing. You can't, can you? Just now. I exhaled. Reinhardt, even breaths. Against Reinhardt, who'd fallen to the ground, Regulus approached without mercy. With a direct hit, his attack would be enough to send Reinhardt flying into pieces. Toward this attack, Reinhardt no longer had any time to dodge. Hastily, he quickly lifted the sword in his arms, blocking the blow with its black scabbard. Reinhardt, coo. Regulus, just what do you think you can do, with that annoying scabbard in the way? Clinging to something that you're unworthy of, why do people like you do such things? I can't understand it all. With this defensive action, Reinhardt's body was sent flying as if it were a toy ball. Although protected from the fatal power of the kick, he fell into the street, crashing through the surrounding architecture. As Reinhardt's body rolled and rolled, the destruction only continued. In that moment, Reinhardt's form, sent flying, became nothing but a bullet. Regulus, right, and now? Subaru. Seeing Reinhardt off well into the distance, Regulus seemed to remember something as he turned around. Being firmly fixed by that gaze, Subaru immediately tensed. Emilia, from beside him, immediately chanted a canto, and in an instant the sky was covered with a multitude of icicles which ruthlessly flew toward Regulus. However, the results spoke for themselves. Regulus, a woman who can't read the situation is just the word. Having to spend time on disciplining them is such a shame. However, because women are just ignorant creatures, they must first be taught. That's just how it is. They're much better after they've been tamed. Slamming into his body and shattering into shards, those icicles were unable to even budge him before they fell to the ground. Languidly, Regulus approached them. Subaru, Emilia. Trying to fight is useless right now. If we still don't understand the mystery, even if we attack, it won't have any effect. Emilia, but... Subaru, right, for now let's just get out of here. Seizing the wrist of the stubborn Emilia, Subaru tried to pull her away from Regulus. Subaru's actions only served to excite Regulus further. Regulus, haha, are you trying to flee? Well, that's only natural. Now that the situation is like this, where you stand no chance against me, though you should have understood that well before you childishly knock upon my door, if you want to flee, then run. Just what was he thinking? Regulus watches them flee with nothing but smiles. However, given this chance to escape, they needed to capitalize on it. No matter what, right now, they had no time to even. Regulus, but you'd have to get away first. As he spoke, Regulus approached Canal. Leaning over, he hoisted half of the water dragon's corpse out of the water. Grabbing its tail, he began to whip it back and forth with a ferocious smile. Emilia, hey, Subaru. I have this feeling of foreboding. Subaru, what a coincidence, so do I. As for what he would do, neither had any clue. However, every unremarkable action he took had completely extraordinary results, that much was plain as day. Therefore, Subaru and Emilia's pace increased rapidly. Taking his time, Regulus laughed pleasantly as he raised his head, before leaping into motion. He set foot on the roof of an adjacent building, then jumped over its upper floors, landing on another, taller structure, until he finally reached a building the height of a clock tower. After that period, both parties now stood a sizable distance apart. However, despite the distance they'd gained, Subaru could still make out Regulus's face. Showing so clearly was that murderous smirk. Regulus, come, if you want to try to hide, see if you can. Whore undeserving of becoming a bride, and bastard who regards this woman as a treasure. I will deliver to you a rain of blood. Regulus lifted the half of water dragon with both hands, and twisted the corpse mercilessly. The dragon's flesh split with an unpleasant squelch, and the slowly dripping blood gushed forth. The bloody wreckage was gleefully waved by Regulus from his high platform. Holding the corpse's tail, still drenched in blood, as if waving a wet towel. As it rotating over his head, endlessly, blood scattered in a halo. Farther, until its momentum brought it to where Subaru and Emilia had fled. Then, the result was... Emilia, Subaru. Subaru, run. The downpour of blood became a rain of destruction, further blighting the city, this carpet bombing aimed directly at the retreating figures of the pair that had been forced to flee. Chapters 48 through 50, the one you will come to love someday.